All right, I'm here with Adam from MX Tech. Where are we at?
We're at Badlands Off-Road Park, Attica, Indiana.
Indiana. That's in the United States of America, if you don't know where that is.
Yeah.
We're testing tires and suspension. What did we test today, mostly?
Today was mostly tires today.
Okay.
So, but, tires are, part of the suspension. So,
Wait, how is that?
well, the pneumatic tire, can flex and absorb bumps. So, depending, say, on the design of the tire or say the inner tube or mousse system that you use, you can create a certain compliance to bumps or obstacles with that works in conjunction with the fork and shock.
So without even changing your suspension, you can either change a tire or change a pressure or switch a mousse and make the suspension or the bike feel different, like you made a suspension change.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I think we felt that this weekend, right? Because you were running a Mitas single green, which is only a 2-ply tire with a softer rubber compound, and then that was yesterday. And today we switched you to a Mitas yellow, which is a 3-ply tire and a harder compound. And with the same PSI, you were feeling what?
Yeah, well, different tire, different compound, different.
Still TerraForce line, but different compound.
But different tread pattern.
Yep.
Different size, so the profile ended up a little different. Yeah, I think the big thing was the ply, but with the same pressure per se, I was getting I felt like I had a lot more bounces off small rocks.
Okay.
The bike seemed to maybe a little deflection, just the traction was odd, but
yeah.
Then it was pretty cool because we rode a couple different rides, and I started at 12 PSI, went down all the way to 8, and it was actually amazing, hitting the same lines, how much better it got or easier it got.
Yeah.
So it just took a little bit of that edge off, and sometimes that's all you need, just that little bit. So
yeah, and versus I was running the TerraForce 120 with a drilled Michelin mousse, and that felt great. And then I put the same TerraForce in a 140, right? And then I ran a non-drilled mousse, and it felt terrible and stiff and bouncy. And so just going to the shorter, narrower tire with a drilled mousse that was more soft, I was still getting a soft tire that would conform, but I didn't have that sidewall height of a 140 that was kind of rolling a lot, which I think surprisingly made a big difference. So we didn't actually make many suspension changes, which I expected to do a lot more of. We made significantly more tire changes.
Yeah. Which isn't bad because, it's as confusing as it is, it's always sort of a good rule to keep the variables as small as possible at times. So, you had already adjusted some clickers and stuff prior to me getting here.
Yeah, I
so
made
you
a
made
bunch
some
of
adjustments that you felt were better.
Terrible decisions. I listened to your podcast with Drew, and I realized your podcast talked a lot about balance, front and rear balance, and how important it was. And just from me trying to cross single obstacles over the years and learning things, I was trying to kind of lower the back end and raise the front end. And after playing with some things and listening to your podcast with Drew, I went back to kind of trying to level the bike out and evening the front and the rear so they work together. And surprisingly, what I found was, when I lowered the rear and raised the front was stiff so it wouldn't do anything. And then the rear was already kind of compressed, so I couldn't get any compression to get traction, right? Versus when I had everything similarly soft, right? I would kind of tap the front end a little bit, and I would get some compression and then use that rebound, and then the rear would actually have room to compress, and I can actually flip the bike up easier, which you would think is the opposite. But all that's on this MX Tech built suspension that we're on. We have similar setups kind of internally with slightly different damping, but tell me a little bit about how different the bikes feel with this MX Tech was this the Blackjack forks, the Lucky Shock with the X-Trig triples. We're both running rally height 260 millimeters in the front, 225 in the rear, but in similar valving settings. But tell us a little bit about how they're feeling different, why they're feeling different, what the advantages and disadvantages of these are from the stock stuff that we've been developing for you've been developing it with Damon for 2 years until I came in the ring 6 months ago and kind of accelerated development. Right?
Yeah, it started, the conversation started a little over 2 years ago, but really the physical suspension being built really started with you. Well, it was last fall, but you had the first set just because you were the quickest person to ride it. Yeah. So you were the quickest person that we could get riding and feedback on, which was really valuable. And just testing into to make sure to see okay, what breaks, what rubs, what's going to cause an issue. But yeah, the suspension is definitely, the stock Tenere is actually a surprisingly good bike, but the stock suspension is pretty basic. Manufacturer obviously has costs that they're looking at that they're putting into the bike, so it's very somewhat very simplistic. It's lower grade. So our whole goal is to create a very sort of high end performance package. So we're changing the whole fork and the shock system. It's 49 millimeter fork that's very similar to a lot of motocross bike forks. We're using what we call our blackjack cartridge, which is what we recommend if people are calling MX Tech for a motocross style setup or GNCC.
Yeah.
It's just, and with the weight of these bikes and sort of the way they're ridden, we feel like it's the better tool for the job, in terms of our cartridge system. And
as opposed to the Raven cartridges?
Yeah, the Raven is another closed cartridge we make, and again, it's that cartridge is orientated more towards say enduro, off-road riding with our dirt bike segments.
But you don't think because of the weight of these bikes, you figured that wouldn't be a good option?
Yeah, I think just because of the weight and the variety of terrain that you could encounter, again, you can really start to get, you can look at really very specific types of riding or riders, but say marketing this to guys that might go out west and ride, a more open desert area in the west, or maybe they'll come east and ride something in the woods type we have here. It's a little more technical. The blackjack gives us a little wider range to play with for all those variables. So.
Well, and I think from my experience, right, we started with, my setup was originally more like your setup, and then we did some races, and I did Grinding Stone Hard Enduro, and we found some things that we want to change. So we've actually, since changed the valving and the dampening internally in my forks, and it's not a big change, but the bikes feel drastically different, and part of that is the mousses, part of that is the setup, but you're running more road book rally, high speed navigation based, versus I'm running more enduro hill climbing based, and we kind of switch bikes a lot, and it is a substantially noticeable difference. So it shows the versatility of the kit, even just with a similar valving setup.
Yeah, we've made a couple of changes on yours just based on feedback. You're definitely, it's been, the focus has been mainly that hard enduro style of riding and Romania and that type of obstacles, which I'm not doing as much of that. I'm doing a little more, I'm orientated more towards a little more flowier off-road. I'll do a little bit of everything, but definitely, I'm not doing Romaniacs and, grinding stone. So, I think your setup, we've made a couple of adjustments. I think that's been steps in the right direction for you, based on feedback. Mine is I've also made a couple adjustments in mine. So from the original settings, just listening to, taking your feedback, mine. We've got Damon who's contributed, Warren in Colorado, and there's even a couple more guys out there now that have bought some kits.
There's a few kits in the market, and to be clear, this is the first Tenere kit in the market built by someone else other than Yamaha. I think there's Bono in Europe. There's a lot of people are doing KYB Triple S conversions, but they're all kind of custom jobs. I don't think there's another company in the U.S. that makes a bolt-on triple tree 48 or 49 millimeter fork and a bolt-on shock. Because Olin's has a kit, European, which is Andriani, Bono. There's not really much else.
Bono's is sort of,
Bono is a KYB Triple S system.
Everything that's sort of on the market is available in Europe, and there's a few different handful of different things over there, but we're definitely like the only U.S. company, and we also, looking at what some of the other people have done, we wanted to make a kit that was definitely made to fit like the Tenere. It's not like taking pieces of a motocross fork or something and trying to retrofit it. Like, it's dedicated kit, so a rider, the shock is direct fit, has hydraulic preload adjust. It's got all of our premium sort of package that you'll find like on all of our other shocks. And then our forks are made to fit. You can fit the stock front wheel, brake system, fenders,
you just
handlebars.
Have to change the triple. So swap the triple.
So triple tree, swap the triple clamp. But
everything else changes over.
Triple clamp is made by X-Trig, which is really good reputation.
Yeah.
It's made specifically for the Tenere, so good fit, man. So it just overall gives us like a way better tool to work with for the job. Like, we could spend a lot of time, say, trying to do modifications to stock, and we could make the bikes work pretty well, but at the end of the day, you'll spend a lot of time and effort, and there's still a lot of deficiencies that you'll have. Where these, it's like the sky's sort of the limit with what we want to do. Like, if you wanted to, if you decide, like, I want to go do a motocross race, like, we could start changing and we can create motocross.
Well, and one thing that I want to cover too is, the bike is pretty good for the average rider of my weight stock without being resprung, right? It just bottoms a lot. It's pretty good in the fast and the flowy. It's surprisingly good stock. It has its limitations, and a lot of people, I think the most popular thing is like the Rally Raid cartridge kit, right? They have a new shock for the rear, and then they do a cartridge kit in the front, or Olin's has a cartridge kit in their shock. So, a lot of people are saying that, with the cost of this kit, which costs, it's a good chunk of change, it's almost as much as the bike, how do you justify, a kit that's significantly more when you can go out and buy like a shock and an insert kit? Like, what are we getting more from replacing the entire fork tubes versus just dropping cartridges in the stock tubes? And what size are the stock tubes? What are they off of?
The stock tubes are a 43 mil system.
Okay.
Wait a second.
The stock fork tube's 43, yeah.
Is it 43?
43 or 42. One of the two.
It's 43. Yeah.
Irrelevant. It's 10.
Yeah, I'm having like 44. But anyway, so the stock forks, again, like the internal parts of the forks are like a very basic dampening system that actually came out. We had, like, if you go back, probably in the mid-80s, and using the same system. It's just, it's a dampener. I mean, it does create dampening. It's open cartridge. It's very cheaply made, say, stamp steel parts inside.
But if you were to replace it with a cartridge kit internally, does
that
replace most of those components?
Yeah, like the Rally Raid and different companies out there will sell internal cartridges. Now, most of them, it's over stock, but like, you can look at it like as different stair steps and say, well, some of those got like, say there's 3 steps to keep it simple, like, good, better, best, like in terms of, the quality of the hardware and the performance that you're looking at. Like, a lot of the cartridge inserts are maybe only just like 1 step up, like they are a little bit of an improvement, like, and oftentimes, an individual will respring when they do one of those cartridges, which is that's a big thing depending on rider weight. Like, arguably it could almost be more, it could be doing more than the cartridge could actually do, which is interesting. People won't necessarily think of it that way, but like our kit is just like, it's our top of the line hardware. It's super adjustable. It has, we're going to like the best, it's the best that we offer. So we have pieces that offer adjustment internally in the fork that are very unique. Like, you're not going to find them on,
like the hydraulic stop.
We have hump valve technology
which
We
is
have,
that's an anti-bottoming
Yeah, we have some unique
valve that kicks in to add dampening at the lowest part of the stroke. So you don't bottom,
the
right?
very end of the stroke, it's like we can tune dampening there to like help prevent like harsh bottoming events, which is really cool. And we have a unique spring perch system that's it's adjustable, it has shims on it, it's very unique. I think the closed cartridge system, closed cartridge is, a lot of the cartridge kits out there are what's referred to as closed cartridge. There's some, like, closed cartridges has its own advantage in terms of performance, mainly on the consistency side of things. You're able to create much better consistency, over longer periods of duration. You're also, depending on valving settings, pressure balance, around like the oil that's around the shims is kept pressurized so it doesn't foam. There's a number of things. It can get very that's like, it's sort of the same. It's sort of the same thing with our shock. Like there are some say more budget friendly shocks out there, but it really just.
But your shock has 3 adjustments, right? It has low speed, mid speed, high speed compression with rebound. So it's 4 adjustments.
Yep.
All the other shocks I've seen, like my last shock, it had compression and rebound. It didn't have high speed compression. And it only had like 11 clicks of compression and like 9 clicks of rebound. I think this shock has like 40 clicks of all of those. So you can really fine tune it. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is like if you are going to take your stock Tenere forks and you're going to put some cartridge in it, the forks aren't coated internally, so they tend to wear out really fast. But also because the diameter is much smaller, they tend to bend really easily and then they leak, right? So those are the 2 things that I notice. The other thing that I notice as well is like, if I'm going to order something from Olin's Andriani from, overseas, or I'm going to order something from Rally Raid, like, there's not a shop that built that to call in the U.S. So, like, when you guys build the shop, you know what it is. You're building it tailored. Like, a lot of those companies only give you 1 or 2 spring options, which is, you need many different spring options for many different weights. So you're able to tailor it a lot better and then call and ask questions about, like, when things need to be adjusted or changed. And that's been a really big kind of important factor I think people overlook. People tend to order like a cartridge kit and a shock and think they can just throw it in and it's good to go. And in general, it's just not. Like there's a lot of tweaks that need to be made specifically for your type of riding and who you are. And in my opinion, right, changing the tubes themselves is, if you want to ride hard, really the only way to go. And in the US, because no one else does it, like this is where we're at, right? We're building this system from the ground up.
Yep.
Without getting too deep into like the technical weeds of what's going on with things,
Yeah, we definitely want to it's part of like, what you'd say like the cost, and so it's very like we're definitely, I would say, we might be at the top of the line in price.
No, I mean the Bono fork kit is like 5,000 euro, which is like 6,000 US, and your fork kit's cheaper than that.
Yeah.
Right, and it comes with triples. And the Olin's is a little bit cheaper, but the Olin's is only 220 mil travel, and it's all you get. You can only get 220 mil travel in the front. This is fully customizable from 200 to 260. So, I mean, the Olin's is a little bit cheaper, but I've run the Olin's and we've seen what it's like, and I think this has been, like comparing a Jeep to a Baja truck is the only way I can compare that, like from one to the other. It's just worlds different, and it's worlds more confidence inspiring and predictable.
Yep.
As long as the idiot with the screwdriver doesn't set it up wrong.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's good, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, there's definitely just there's a consumer market out there, like you and I know, like there are some people that just want to buy bikes and they like to upgrade them and they want to extract as much performance out of them as they can, and for whatever they want to do. And so that's sort of like what we're doing. We're trying to we want to make a product in the U.S. and like have really good customer support, and it seems like we spend a lot of time like always watching Europeans. It's like, oh man, it's like, well,
we're not doing it here.
We can have it here too. We just have to do it. So,
well, and like realistically, if you were to go out and buy a brand new 890R, suspension's like 22 or 23 grand now, so this is still a 10K bike. And I think the suspension's like for the fork and the shock and the triples and all the components, right? It's $700, right? So you're equipping something with similar performance to a rally, right? An 890 rally for still like $5,000 cheaper.
Yeah.
So, and they're similar to the Ducati Desert X rally that just came out. That's got KYB Triple S fronts on it, I think.
Yeah.
And it's got an upgraded shock. And that's a $23,000 bike. So, comparing, if you start actually comparing apples to apples or trying to buy, like you can buy the regular 890R for 13.5 or 14 grand, whatever it is, right? And then I think it's $8,000 to upgrade the forks and the shock to the cone valve and the track shock. So we're in the same ballpark for a premium component suspension built in the US with someone you can actually call and get advice and get suggestions, right? And that for me, the service and the questions and having the ability to send it in and hey, can we revalve this? Can we change that? Can we swap the spring ring? Is a huge advantage because you can't get that when you buy something overseas.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult for sure. We hear stories like that all the time. It's awesome. It's been good because you do a lot of interesting riding. Romaniacs obviously very very cool, interesting project.
Romaniacs
yeah, it's gonna be cool. It's awesome because we ended up like we're not very far apart, so only being say an hour or so from each other.
Yeah,
it's made it even a little easier. Like not only are we in the U.S., but we're practically next door to each other.
Yeah.
So
that's
it's
awesome.
made the testing good, and we've been able to make good progress. I feel like in a fairly short amount of time.
I mean, it's been
considering we only got to ride the initial setups once or twice, and then winter hit.
And then I went straight to Riding Stone, and
then you went out west, so you were able to continue to ride, so that was good. But
that was wild.
Yeah.
Well, where can everybody find you at?
Yeah, you can find us online, mx-tech.com. We have Instagram, Facebook. You can search us down on there. We're in Northern Illinois, about an hour south of Chicago.
Okay.
If you're in the area, we definitely have we do business all over the country. Mexico, Canada. We also have Europe, Australia, Japan. So yeah, we're a little bit everywhere. Definitely, our biggest market is like the U.S. market, and we do a fair amount of stuff in the region. Just because the company's been where it's at for 35 years. So, but we have like a wide range. The ATV or the ADV, excuse me, not ATV. The ADV market is a new sort of segment that I've sort of brought to the company when I was there 4 years ago. Germany historically has been, very big and across more off-road dirt bike racing, but like ADV stuff, this type of thing has always been sort of a passion of mine. Sweet. For quite a few years, and so it's been really cool. That obviously a lot of awesome people play, you guys. It's just a countless list. It keeps growing the more people we meet. So.
Well, we're hoping to keep growing it so we can keep. We just got that race series at Fox Valley, so hopefully we can get some more people there and get